Hey, hey, hey.
Alright y'all, so we have another All-Star game upcoming and another year that Trae Young has been snubbed from that game. And honestly, it's kind of just funny at this point, at least to me, that the Trae Young and Atlanta Hawks fans, it doesn't even feel like they are surprised by this choice. If anything, they're just mildly irritated that it's another season that we're not going to see such a great offensively minded player like Trae Young not be in the All-Star game, because let's face it, Trae Young is one of the best highlight machines that the NBA has currently, and so not having him in a game that is supposed to be full of highlights just doesn't really make sense. So why is Trae Young not an All-Star? This is a question I have been asking myself ever since the rosters got announced, at least the reserves got announced, and I'm coming up with a theory. It's probably not right, but let me just spew a little bit. For starters, I think it's really interesting that Trae Young actually made the All-Star game in his second season, back when people were still fans of his. At least the majority of NBA fans were fans of Trae Young. Second year, he averaged 29 points and 9 assists across the full season, which is just something that doesn't really happen that often. And the fans rewarded him with an All-Star game for it. But since then, he has played 4 seasons, and in all of those seasons, he has averaged at least 25 points and 9 assists every single year, and yet he only has one more All-Star appearance to show for it. So maybe it's because there's been maybe like a lack of improvement for the reason that Trae Young doesn't get into the All-Star game, but regardless, you would think that someone who is consistently, you know, top 15 in points per game and top 5 in assists per game, you would think that would normally be a lock for an All-Star game. But when it comes to Trae Young, that's not the case. Now, another argument that I could see people make for the anti-Trae Young case is that he doesn't play defense, he's not a winner, all of those, you know, beautiful discourse ideas that we've seen about Trae Young in recent years. And in previous seasons, I would agree with you, but this year, you know, for people who haven't been watching Trae Young, you're missing out, because he's actually putting together a pretty complete season. In fact, this is definitely the best season he's had in his career so far. Not only is he averaging a new career high in assists per game at 11 a night, but he's also averaging a new career high in steals per game at 1.5, and you know, you can still pick out plays here and there where Trae Young looks lost or defenses attack him, because at the end of the day, he is an undersized, very small guard that you're just gonna be able to pick on every now and then. But rather than being a total negative defender, Trae Young this season, again, is taking a leap defensively. He's making enough plays and getting enough steals and forcing enough turnovers. So now, in total, he's more of like a net zero kind of defender. And yet, he still, you know, doesn't make the All-Star team, so it can't be that. So why is Trae Young not an All-Star? And my leading theory currently is that Trae Young must just be super unliked amongst the NBA peers and coaches and all of those kinds of guys. Because I can understand from a fan vote, Trae Young has never really been a fan favorite. I mean, people loved him, I feel like, his rookie and second season. And then he had the series against the New York Knicks in the playoffs where he became the villain, and everyone's really loving that. And then since then, I don't know if it's because of the foul baiting and the fact that he was kind of the face of that for the NBA, and that pissed a lot of people off. Or maybe it had to do with the fact that the Miami Heat absolutely clamped him back in their playoff series a couple years ago, and people just kind of saw Trae Young as more of a fraud than a good basketball player, which is the incorrect take, but I can see why people would come away with that assumption. I don't really know what specifically it was, but Trae Young has just lost a lot of fans for some reason. Because at the end of the day, that's the only real reason I can think of for why he isn't on this All-Star team. I mean, the fans literally voted in Damian Lillard to be the All-Star starter over Trae Young. I don't know how that makes any sense in the year 2024, but we've somehow gotten there. Either way, Trae Young, I don't know if it was related. He probably had a bit of a chip on his shoulder, but his first game out after the All-Star reserves got announced, he came out and dropped 32 points, 15 assists, and got a huge win at home against the Phoenix Suns, who had been on a bit of a tear recently. And watching this game back, I don't know how you can watch this and not see an All-Star caliber player. Trae Young was the best player on the court in this game, and his fingerprints were all over it. For starters, there are very few guys who can make the same kind of shots that Trae Young can make. You know, Steph Curry, Damian Lillard, maybe like a Tyrese Halliburton. He's just pulling from insane ranges, and he's knocking him down very efficiently. He's one of the best deep range shooters we have in the NBA. And the best part about Trae Young getting hot from 3 in a game is that makes the Atlanta offense almost unstoppable. And I say that because we all know that Trae Young is a good passer. You know, even if you are the biggest Trae Young hater, you have to admit that the man can swing the ball. And so when he's hitting shots from these deep ranges, it forces other teams to have to send double teams at him or trap him out of the pick and roll. And what this does is it opens up so many other open and free looks for his teammates that, again, it just makes the Atlanta offense look almost unstoppable because they're playing 4-on-3 half the time. And I also hate how a bunch of people talk about today's NBA game and say that there's no more traditional point guard play. There's, no more John Stocktons or Jason Kidds or whoever else you want to throw in there that was, good in the past. And it bugs me because, yeah, we still do have traditional point guards. They just also have a play style that fits today's NBA modern system. Tyrese Halliburton, Trae Young, Luka Doncic, if you want to count him as a point guard. All of these guys are tremendous in the pick and roll. They are tremendous at spraying the ball around the court, driving kicks, skip passes out of pick and roll, or just flat out making insane passes that only these guys can make. So again, it just doesn't make sense to me when there are people complaining about the point guard play in today's NBA, and then they go and hate on Trae Young for dropping 11 assists a night and just passing like few others can in the league. And then I already touched on the defense a little bit earlier in the video, but I wanted to bring up the clips just to prove it to y'all because, again, like I said, there will be plays where Trae Young gets caught in no man's land, or just he's not guarding anyone, and you're able to pick on him for his size, and it happens. It still happens. It's gonna happen for the rest of his career. But it should be known that Trae Young plays good defense too. He stripped Devin Booker and Kevin Durant both in this one game. It led to really easy offense for him. Even outside of that, he was playing some good pesky defense on potential drives to the rim. He forced a turnover on Bradley Beal. I just don't think you can say negative things about his defense without at least showing the positives as well, because he has been, again, a net zero defensive player this season, and for Trae Young, that is all you need. Either way, the point of this video I'm trying to get at is, I don't know why Trae Young was snubbed from the All-Star game, but one thing I know for sure is that it definitely doesn't have to do with his on-court play. I think it has way more to do with just off-court antics and discussions in the discourse around today's NBA, because Trae Young is putting together a really, really good season of basketball, and I at least hope that at the end of the season, he can get some All-NBA recognition for it. He made All-NBA back in 2022, and if he can make it then, I think this season, again, he's deserving of it. Now, the only way I can see it not happening is obviously there are a lot of other good point guards in the NBA today, but even then, I think Halliburton, Luka Doncic, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jalen Brunson, Donovan Mitchell, and then you could maybe persuade me on like a Devin Booker. I don't know, Trae Young gets too much disrespect at this point. I've used to be a non-Trae Young fan, but the disrespect has gotten way too far. Yeah, he needs more recognition. I don't know what else to say at this point. He's just one of the best offensive engines in the NBA today, and he gets no love for it, while other players like Luka have entire fan bases dedicated to him, and it doesn't really make sense to me.
Hey.